We have breaking news coming in after the Ministry of External Affairs summoned Sri Lankan Envoy in New Delhi as Sri Lankan Navy fired at 13 Indian fishermen. The Sri Lankan Navy has now issued a response. It says, and I quote, Indian fishermen as an organized group have attempted to assault naval personnel in the process. An accidental fire has taken place, causing slight injuries to 2 Indian fishermen, unquote. So that's the response after New Delhi summoned the Sri Lankan envoy. Now, viewers, the MEA, the Ministry of External Affairs, had confirmed that 13 fishermen from India were arrested by the Sri Lankan Navy on Monday night, and 2 of them have suffered serious injuries in the Navy's gunfire. And India had lodged a strong protest that the use of force is not acceptable under any circumstance, and existing understandings between the 2 governments in this regard must be strictly observed, to which now the Sri Lankan Navy has responded by saying that the Indian fishermen had indulged in assaulting. They had attempted to assault the Sri Lankan naval personnel in the process. The accidental fire, they're saying that they did not fire on them deliberately or anything, but it was an accidental fire that has taken place, and also tries to downplay it by saying that it has just caused slight injuries to 2 Indian fishermen. And the latest point of right now. All right, my colleague Arth is joining us live on the broadcast from the newsroom. Arth, tell us more details about what really has happened and how Sri Lanka is now trying to downplay this and putting the blame on the Indian fishermen.
Well, Rakshita, there seems to be some problem with your audio, but as far as I caught your question, this passage of fishermen in the international waters shared by Sri Lanka and India, this has always been one of the major friction points between the Indian side and the Sri Lankan side. And now the Ministry of External Affairs has lodged strong protest yesterday. We saw early morning the news came in that the Sri Lankan envoy, the acting High Commissioner, was summoned by the Ministry of External Affairs. And this friction point has to be raised whenever there is some bilateral scope of mechanism, bilateral negotiation between India and Sri Lanka, because this has been a friction point since a long time. And now 13 fishermen were fired at by the Sri Lankan Navy, and the Sri Lanka, in an official statement of the Sri Lankan Navy, the Sri Lankan Navy claims that they have seized a boat of 13 Indian fishermen during a poaching incident. But at the same time, for India, for Ministry of External Affairs, because Rakshita, one must understand that these fishermen, they do not really know when they are in international waters, they do not really know the nuances and the nitty-gritties of boundaries when it comes to waters, and sometimes they go by mistake, and such incidents happen. And it is important the Ministry of External Affairs, like it has lodged a strong protest. Now it will be interesting to see what the course of action is, and then what the negotiations look like between India and Sri Lanka to resolve a friction point which has been ongoing since many years now. Back to the studio.
Right, of course, and this is something that New Delhi has emphasized. It has laid great stress on the fact that existing understandings between the 2 governments in this regard must be strictly observed, that the use of force in any circumstance is not acceptable.
Well, absolutely, Rakshita. In international waters, safe passage is one of the important, one of the important mechanisms put forth by the United Nations Convention of the Laws of Sea, the UN clause. And now it will be interesting to see how India actually, makes it clear to the Sri Lankan side that the use of force is not like it has mentioned in its statement, but it will be interesting to see how India makes it diplomatically clear that use of force is not acceptable under any circumstance when it comes to our fishermen and their fishing activities on our international borders or in international waters. Like I said, most of the times, Rakshita, these fishermen, they are not even aware of where they are, and such innocent fishermen are time and again attacked by Sri Lankan Navy and other policing forces on our international waters. So it really emerges as a concern for the Indian side. Back to the studio, Rakshita.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Arth, for joining us with those details. And of course, there is a lot of anger amongst the families of the fishermen as well, viewers. Right now, what we know that the injured fishermen are right now undergoing treatment in Jaffna. We'll get you more updates on that developing story. At the same time, we have some breaking news now coming in. Amid the Mahakumbh Mela in Prayagraj, Ram Mandir Trust has issued an appeal